This sadly will be the last part of this series, but thank you all for the support and your ideas or what if ideas are on the way. During this recording I will be writing the script for another what if, so if you want spoilers you can watch me write, but if you don't, just tune out the script. This idea of a what if came from Scarlett Afton. P.S. Sorry if this isn't what you imagined, but it's what I thought up. So also Lane Dixon, I did not forget about you. I'm just rewatching parts of Bleach to remember Aizen's abilities. So without further ado, let's go. Best out. Naruto didn't pack much. Just the essentials. He had a spare bag from Cabin 10. A few supplies from the camp store, and a first aid kit from Will, courtesy of Cabin 7. His kunai and shuriken were all that's left for him to pack. The camp store loaned the questers $100 and 20 golden drachmas that were big and had images of various Greek gods stamped on one side and the Empire State Building on the other. Chiron gave the trio of demigods each a canteen of nectar and a Ziploc bag full of ambrosia squares, in case of emergency. It was god food, Chiron reminded them. It would cure them from almost any injury, but it was lethal to mortals. The centaur warned them that if an overdose would cause them to burn up and turn into ashes. Annabeth brought her magic Yankees cap, a gift given by her mother during her 12th birthday. A book on famous classical architecture, in Greek, of course. And a long bronze knife, hidden in her shirt sleeve. To which Percy was sure that would get them busted the first time they went through a metal detector. Grover wore his fake feet and pants to pass as human. He wore a green Rasta cap, to cover the tips of his horns should it ever rain. His bright orange backpack was full of scrap metal and apples to snack on. And a set of reed pipes his daddy goat had carved for him. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover waved goodbye to the other campers, took one last look at the strawberry fields, the ocean, and the big house, then hiked up Half-Blood Hill to the tall pine tree that used to Thalia, daughter of Zeus. Naruto was already up there, his eyes noticeably red and puffy, and he was leaning against its trunk. Annabeth frowned when she saw her childhood friend's state, and approached him. "Are you okay?" She placed a hand on his arm. Naruto visibly flinched upon contact, worrying the girl more, and wiped his eyes. "Why yeah, I'm fine, Annie," the blonde assured her. The daughter of Athena wasn't buying it, and glared at her not-so-secret crush, Whiskers. "I know you for far too long." Her glare softened. "I know when you're lying." Naruto glowered. "How exactly?" he snapped. "Your posture stiffened, you stutter when you speak," Annabeth listed off. "And you look away when you're lying." She put her hands on her hips. "Tell me what's wrong, Naruto," she said in a soft tone. "Please." A few feet away, Percy leaned to Grover and whispered, "Should I do something or?" He trailed off. Grover shook his head and put an arm around Percy and led him away from the two blondes. "Just let them do their thing, Percy." The demigod and the satyr walked towards Chiron as Annabeth comforted Naruto. The trainer was waiting for them in his wheelchair. Next to him was the surfer dude that Percy saw around camp. According to Grover, the guy was the camp's head of security. He supposedly had eyes all over his body so he could never be surprised. Today, however, he was wearing a chauffeur's uniform, so they could only see extra eyes on his hands, face, and neck. "This is Argus," Chiron introduced the two to the man. "He will drive you into the city and, well, keep an eye on things." The centaur frowned when he noted the absence of the two blondes. "Where are Mr. Uzumaki and Miss Chase?" he asked. Grover pointed towards the pine tree and Chiron smiled when he saw Annabeth hugging the taller blonde, a blush sporting her cheeks. "Ah, young love," the centaur said with a smile. Annabeth seemed to have heard Chiron, and if it was possible, her cheeks turned redder. The two separated and approached the group, Annabeth with pink cheeks. Grover snickered at Annabeth, who glared at him. The satyr shut up, but the smile didn't leave his face. "If I may, Mr. Uzumaki. Are you all right?" Chiron asked kindly. Never been better, Chiron. Naruto grinned. He liked Chiron. Guy acted like Alfred, kind, caring, and grandfatherly. He missed the old butler. Just as the group was about to leave, the sound of footsteps stopped them. Luke came running up the hill, carrying a pair of basketball shoes. Hey! He yelled and panted. Glad I caught you guys. Just wanted to say good luck, Luke told them, and I thought, maybe you could use these. He handed Percy the sneakers, which looked normal to him. Heck, they even smelled normal. If him sniffing them and not reacting was any indication. Naruto did the same thing to various objects during his time as Robin, and even now. It helped in detective work. Noticing the skeptical the shoes were getting, Luke smirked. Maya. White, feathery wings sprouted out of the heels, startling the son of Poseidon so much, he dropped them. The shies flapped around in the ground until the wings folded up and disappeared. Awesome! Grover exclaimed. Luke smiled. Those served me well when I was on my quest. A gift from Dad. Of course, I don't use them much these days. He said sadly. Percy looked shocked at the gift and was a bit embarrassed at getting it. Hey, man. Thanks. He meant it, by Luke's sincerity in his tone told how much he valued the shoes. Listen, Percy. Luke shifted around nervously. A lot of hopes are riding on you. So just kill some monsters for me, okay? They shook hands. As he turned to Naruto, he had a pained look in his eyes, the one he always seemed to have after the whiskered blonde's claiming. Leaving us again, huh, Naruto? He joked, though there seemed to be a bit of hurt in his voice. Only for a while, Luke. Naruto smiled at the older blonde. Naruto knew how hard it was to cope with Thalia's death. That, and Luke always seemed to look emotional whenever he was around, and he understood that. Alfred once caught Naruto looking at Thalia's photo that he kept with him during her birthday. The kind butler comforted the young blonde, and the next day, Naruto was shocked and happy to find a framed portrait of Thalia in the manor. Bless the butler's heart. Luke moved on to pat Grover's head between his horns, and then gave a goodbye hug to Annabeth. Annabeth unknowingly stared at Naruto, and was snapped out of her trance by Percy. The son of the sea elbowed her. Do you like him? Percy asked, referring to their fellow quest member. Annabeth turned bright red. What? No. How can you say that? I only see him as a friend. She said heatedly, her voice getting a tad bit higher at each word. It's pretty obvious, you know. Why not just tell him? Oh. Why do I want to go anywhere with you, Percy? Annabeth huffed in anger and stomped down the other side of the hill, a white SUV waiting for them on the road. Argus followed, jingling his car keys. Percy picked up the magic shoes and frowned at them before looking at Chiron. I won't be able to use these, will I? The trainer shook his head. Luke meant well, Percy. But taking to the air. That would be not wise for you. The demigod nodded, a bit disappointed. He turned to Naruto and held up the shoes. Do you want to use them? Percy asked, to which the whiskered blonde shook his head. Nah. Don't need 'em. Percy looked at Grover. How about you, Groves? The satyr's eyes lit up. Me. Pretty soon they'd laced the sneakers over his fake feet, and Grover grinned and activated the magic shoes. Maya. He got off the ground fine, but then fell over sideways, which caused his backpack to get dragged through the grass. The winged shoes kept bucking up and down. Poor Grover got bonked on the head a few times as he tried, and failed, to control them. Practice. Chiron called after the flying goat. You just need practice. Was Grover's only reply as he went flying sideways down the hill, heading towards the van. Before Naruto or Percy could follow, the centaur halted them. I should have trained you both better, he muttered. If only I had more time. Heracles, Jason, they all got more training. What am I thinking? Chiron suddenly cried out before looking at the son of Poseidon. Do you still have the pen, Percy? Percy nodded, and fished the small pen out of his pocket. Yeah, I found this after I woke up in the infirmary. What about it? Percy, that's a gift from your father. I've kept it for years, not knowing you were who I was waiting for. But the prophecy is clear to me now. You are the one. The boy remembered the field trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, when he vaporized Mrs. Dodd. Chiron had thrown him a pen that turned into a sword. Could this be? Percy uncapped the pen, and to his and Naruto's surprise, the sword that Percy used during his fight with the Minotaur was in the son of Poseidon's hands. The sword has a long and tragic history that we need not go into, Chiron told him. Its name is Anaklusmos. Riptide, Percy translated easily. Use it only for emergencies, Chiron said, and only against monsters. No hero should harm mortals, unless absolutely necessary of course, but this sword wouldn't harm them in any case. Both demigods looked at the bronze blade. What do you mean it wouldn't harm mortals? How could it not? The boy asked in disbelief. The sword is celestial bronze. Forged by the Cyclopes, tempered in the heart of Mount Etna, any creature from the underworld, provided they don't kill you first. But the blade will pass through mortals like an illusion. They are simply not important enough for the blade to kill. And I should warn you, as a demigod, you can be killed by either celestial or normal weapons. You are twice as vulnerable. Good to know. Now, recap the pen. Percy touched the pen cap to the sword tip and instantly, Riptide shrank to the ballpoint pen again. He tucked it in his pocket, looking a tad nervous. What if I lose it? He asked. Chiron smiled. You can't lose the pen no matter how much you try. He said with some amusement in his tone. It is enchanted. It will always reappear in your pocket. Try it. The green-eyed boy looked wary, but threw the pen as far as he could down the hill and watched it disappear in the grass. It may take a few moments. Chiron told him. Now, check your pocket. Sure enough, the pen was there. Okay, that's extremely cool, Percy admitted with a smile. But what if a mortal sees me pulling out a sword? Chiron smiled. Mist is a powerful thing, Percy. Mist. It's the veil that Hecate controls, Aqualad. Naruto informed the boy. Keeps mortals from seeing gods and monsters. Since we're half-bloods, we see just fine, and since the blade has celestial in its name, mortals can't see it either. He asked the centaur, who nodded with a pleased look in his eye. Percy nodded in understanding too while putting Riptide back in his pocket. Chiron looked at Naruto. May I take a closer inspection on your weapon, Naruto? The blonde nodded and held his arm towards the trainer. Chiron examined it before widening his eyes. The gauntlet of Zeus. Naruto tilted his head. The what now? The gauntlet of Zeus, Mr. Uzumaki. Chiron said, forged by Lord Hephaestus, your father used this gauntlet to chain the titans in the depths of Tartarus. Naruto looked at his gauntlets and let out a whistle. Chiron spoke, though I am unaware of what it does. I think of a weapon, and the gauntlets transform into it. To prove his point, the gauntlets shined before transforming into his twin handguns. The trainer frowned in disapproval at the modern weapon. Mr. Uzumaki, may I ask, why guns of all things? While some older demigods use firearms, and that was rare as it is, the centaur more or less preferred traditional weapons such as bows and swords. Just used to it, why? Tradition, my boy. Naruto let out a no. Before the boy could speak, Chiron raised a hand. But, if it is your desired choice, then I support it, He smiled. Naruto grinned at the centaur. With all that done, the two demigods set off down the hill after the rest of their group. When Percy got to the bottom of the hill, he looked back. Under the pine tree that used to be Thalia, Naruto's older sister, Chiron was standing in full horseman form, holding his bow in salute. A send-off by the trainer. Argus soon drove them out of the countryside and into western Long Island. It felt weird to be on a highway again, Annabeth and Percy sitting on opposite sides while Naruto sat in the middle, with Grover riding shotgun. Percy was staring out the window while Naruto was inspecting his pistols. Silence filled the van. So far so good, Percy told Annabeth, breaking the silence. 10 miles and not a single monster. She gave him an irritated look. It's bad luck to talk that way, seaweed brain. Don't jinx it, Aqualad. Naruto said, not looking up from his inspection. Percy ignored his cousin and glowered at Annabeth. Remind me again, why do you hate me so much? He asked the girl with a small sigh. I don't hate you. Could have fooled me. She folded her invisibility cap. Look. We're just not supposed to get along, okay? Our parents are rivals. And that should be the same with me and Naruto, yet, we seem to get along okay. Not why us? He asked with a quirked brow. Annabeth sighed. How many reasons do you want? One time my mom caught Poseidon with his girlfriend in Athena's temple, which is hugely disrespectful. Another time, Athena and Poseidon competed to be the patron god for the city of Athens. Your dad created stupid saltwater spring for his gift. My mom created the olive tree. The people saw that her gift was better, so they named the city after her. They must really like olives. Percy concluded. Oh, forget it. Now, if she'd invented pizza, that I could understand. He grinned at the girl. I said, forget it. Please stop this before it gets out of hand. Naruto looked up from his handgun and turned to the two demigods. Seeing the two of them descending to a cold war, the son of Zeus just sighed and went back to checking his firearm. Silence prevailed once again. Traffic slowed them down in Queens. By the time they got into Manhattan, it was sunset and starting to rain. Argus dropped them at the Greyhound station on the Upper East Side, not far from Percy's mom and Gabe's apartment. Taped below a mailbox was a soggy flyer with the son of Poseidon's picture on it. Below the picture was text that read, "Have you seen this boy?" Percy ripped it down before the others could notice and read it as fast as he could before he threw it away with an angry look on his face. Argus unloaded their bags, and made sure they got their bus tickets, then drove away, the eye on the back of his hand opening to watch them as he pulled out of the parking lot. Percy held a look of longing on his face as Grover chatted with him about something. Naruto wasn't really listening as he was talking to Annabeth. Can you at least play nice with Aqualad, Annie? He asked the girl. Annabeth sighed, I know, geez. She huffed. It's just, I don't know, it's this thing in my gut I guess. She admitted. Naruto put a hand on the girl's shoulder. We're not our parents, you know. I get the tension too, and trust me I know the feeling. But their arguments and squabbles are with them. It's none of our business. The son of Zeus said. Nice policy. Gotta do what you have to do, Annie. He grinned at her. Annabeth looked at Naruto, who had his blue eyes covered by a pair of black shades, even if it was approaching evening. It's almost dark, why are you wearing that? Naruto just smiled at her, secret. The rain didn't stop. They got restless waiting for the bus and decided to play catch with one of Grover's apples. Tossing the apple from one to another as Grover desperately tried to get it. Then, they played hacky sack with the same apple. Annabeth was extremely good. Able to bounce the fruit with her knee, shoulder, and elbow. Percy wasn't bad either. But Naruto stole the show, doing various flips and tricks while bouncing the apple. As much as he hated to admit it, he had to thank Grayson for that. The game ended when Percy tossed the apple toward the satyr, which got too close to his mouth. In one huge bite, their hack sack disappeared into the belly of the goat boy. Grover blushed and tried to apologize, but the demigods were too busy laughing. The bus finally came. As the four stood in line to board the vehicle, Grover started looking around, sniffing the air like a dog. "What is it?" Percy asked. "I don't know," he said tensely. "Maybe it's nothing." "Keep your guard up, but don't look too tense," Naruto spoke, narrowing his eyes behind his shades, his training as Robin kicking in. Annabeth already doing so, and Percy looking over his shoulders every few seconds. A sigh of relief was heard when they finally got on board and found seats together in the back of the bus. Annabeth, Percy, and Grover stowed their backpacks, while Naruto held his own close to him. Never can be too careful. Ah, great, his paranoia's kicking in. But considering their situation, being paranoid might actually help. As the last passengers got on, Annabeth clamped her hand onto the son of Zeus' knee. "Whiskers," she said in a tight whisper. An old lady had just boarded the bus. She wore a crumpled velvet dress and a shapeless orange knit hat that shadowed her face, along with a few more accessories such as lace gloves and a big paisley purse. When the woman tilted her head up, her black eyes glittered, something which Naruto noticed caused Percy to flinch and withdraw into his seat. Two more ladies came behind her. One in a green hat and the other in a purple hat. They sat in the front row, right behind the driver. The two on the aisle crossed their legs over the walkway, forming an X. The bus rode out of the station, and they headed through the bustling streets of Manhattan. "Ms. Dodds didn't stay dead long," Percy said in a shaky voice. "I thought you said they could be dispelled for a lifetime." He turned to Annabeth with a look. "I said if you're lucky," the girl reminded him. "You're obviously not." "I could say the same for me," Naruto muttered, glaring at the elderly ladies. "All three of them," Grover whimpered. "The immortals." "It's okay," Annabeth tried to assure them, thinking in overdrive. "The Furies. The three worst monsters from the underworld. No problem. No problem. We'll just slip out of the windows." She was panicking. "They don't open," Grover informed them. "A back exit?" "None. And even if there is, we'll get trapped either way." Naruto pointed at the oncoming tunnel. "They won't attack with witnesses around," Percy said. "Will they?" "There's the mist, Percy, it'll keep the mortals from noticing anything wrong." Naruto frowned. "Mortals don't have good eyes," Annabeth added. "Their brains can only process what they see through the mist." "They'll see three old ladies killing us, won't they?" Percy suggested. Annabeth thought about it. "Hard to say. But we can't count on mortals for help. Maybe an emergency exit in the roof." Darkness abruptly blanketed them, cutting off Annabeth's question. They'd hit Lincoln Tunnel, and the bus went dark except for the running lights down the aisle. It was dead quiet without the rain. The Fury with the orange whatever it is got up and declared she needed to use the bathroom in a fake tone. That was such bullshit, Naruto thought. "So do I," the second sister said. "So do I," the third echoed. They all started coming down the aisle. "I've got it," Annabeth said. "Percy, take my hat." The sea child blinked, much to the girl's annoyance. "Come on, take it," she insisted. She turned to Naruto, who put his hood on for extra protection. The red helmet was a contradiction to the darkness that enveloped the bus. Naruto jabbed a thumb on his chest. "Don't worry about me, Annie." Annabeth nodded and looked at the son of Poseidon. Percy, you're one of the two they want. Turn invisible and go up the aisle. Let them pass you. Maybe you can get to the front and get away. What about Naru? Don't worry about me. Naruto cut the boy off. Percy nodded hesitantly. What about you guys? He looked at Grover and Annabeth. There's an outside chance they might not notice us, Annabeth said. You and Naruto are both sons of the big three. Your smell might be overpowering, along with Naruto's scent. This could work. We can't just leave you, Naruto argued sternly. His voice slightly robotic with his helmet on. Annabeth's heart fluttered and her cheeks flushed but insisted. Don't worry about us, she said. Go. Percy took the hat shakily and put it on. Grover turned towards Naruto's seat and... He's gone. Grover whispered, dumbfounded and confused. How did he disappear so fast? Percy also thought the same thing, but quickly stopped the train of thought. He had to focus. He began to creep up the aisle. He got up about 10 seats before he had to duck into an empty seat as the Furies passed him. Mrs. Dodds stopped, sniffing, and looked straight at him. Percy's heart pounded rapidly. She started to sniff some more and looked at the other asshole. From his angle, Percy could see a glimpse of a familiar red helmet from the darkness of the other aisle. He was free. The boy made it to the front of the bus. They were almost through the Lincoln Tunnel now. He was about to press the emergency stop button when he heard hideous wailing from the back row. The old ladies transformed. Their faces were the same, but their bodies shriveled into leathery brown hag bodies with bats' wings and hands and feet like gargoyle claws. Their handbags turning into fiery whips. The Furies surrounded Grover and Annabeth, lashing their whips while hissing, "Where is it? Where?" The other passengers started screaming, cowering in their seats. They all saw something, all right. They aren't here, Annabeth yelled. They're gone. The Furies hissed angrily and raised their whips. Annabeth drew her bronze knife. Grover grabbed his tin can from his snack bag and prepared to throw it. Percy looked at the distracted bus driver and narrowed his eyes. Still invisible, the boy grabbed the wheel from the man and jerked it to the left. Everybody screamed as they were thrown to the right, and he heard what was hopefully the Furies smashing against the windows. The hell do you think you're doing? Naruto's voice rang out through the current chaos. Percy turned briefly to see that he had twin, sleek, and not to mention cool bronze pistols on his hands, right behind the Furies and rolling on the ground from his impulsive action. The blonde looked like he was about to shoot them in the head while the monsters were distracted by Grover and Annabeth. Naruto gritted his teeth and aimed one of his handguns toward the Furies and pulled the trigger. The bronze bullet came sailing out of the chamber and whizzed past the aisle, hitting a Fury. The Fury wailed in pain, a hole in its shoulder where the bullet passed through. Need to work on my aim, Naruto thought absently. Hey! The driver yelled. Hey whoa! Percy wrestled for the wheel. The bus slammed against the side of the tunnel, grinding metal, throwing sparks a mile behind them. They shot out of Lincoln Tunnel and back into the rain, all the while people and monsters were tossed around the bus, and outside cars were plowed aside. Somehow, the driver found an exit, shooting off the highway through half a dozen traffic lights. They ended up flying down one of those New Jersey rural roads right across the river from New York. There were woods to their left, the Hudson River to their right, and the driver seemed to be veering toward the river. Another great idea. Percy hit the emergency brake. The bus screeched, spinning into a full circle on the wet asphalt, and crashed into the trees. The emergency lights came on. The door flew open. The bus driver was the first to get out, quickly followed by the other passengers after him, yelling as they stampeded after the man. The Furies regained their balance. They lashed their whips at Annabeth while she waved her knife and yelled in ancient Greek, telling them to back off. Grover threw tin cans. The wounded Fury went to strike Naruto for revenge, but the former Robin flipped back, the tip of his boot striking the Fury on the chin, knocking the Fury back a bit. The monster screeched in rage and flew straight towards the son of Zeus and raised its whip, only for the masked blonde to grab its arm. The Fury felt cold metal under its chin and howled, trying to escape. "Eat bullets!" Naruto roared and shot the Fury under its chin, the bullet escaping its head and reducing it to golden dust. Percy looked at the open doorway. He was free to go, but he couldn't leave his friends. So the boy took off the cap and yelled, "Hey!" The two remaining Furies turned, baring their rotten and yellow fangs at him, and the exit suddenly seemed like an excellent idea. Naruto ran and stopped right in front of Percy, lightly crouching. The orange-hatted one stalked up the aisle, occasionally flicking her whip, melting the row of seats. The sister hopped on top of the left rows of seats and crawled towards him and Percy like a lizard, her arms and legs in awkward angles. "Perseus Jackson, Naruto Uzumaki," Mrs. Dodds called in an accent. "You have offended the gods," she hissed. "You shall die." "I liked you better as a math teacher," Percy told her. "Fuck off, for all I care," Naruto glared at her with hate. The monster growled at them. Annabeth and Grover moved up behind the Furies cautiously, looking for an opening. Percy drew his ballpoint pen out of his pocket and uncapped it, Riptide appearing in his hands. The Furies hesitated. Mrs. Dodds had felt the celestial bronze sword before. She obviously didn't like seeing it again. "Submit, now," she hissed. "And you will not suffer eternal torment." "Nice try," the son of Poseidon snorted as he got into a stance. Naruto tightened his grip on his pistols, lightning dancing around his form. "Guys, look out!" Annabeth cried. Naruto grabbed Percy and forced him to duck along with him, the two dodging the Fury's whip. Mrs. Dodds lunged at Percy, only for Naruto to change one of his firearms into the curved blades he used during Capture the Flag and sliced the whip clean through, a shockwave of lightning hitting the Fury, causing her to stumble back. The one on the left lunged at the son of Poseidon, but he swung his blade. As soon as the blade connected with her neck, she screamed and exploded into dust. Annabeth got Mrs. Dodds in a hold and yanked her backwards while Grover managed to rip the remains of the whip out of her hands. "Ow!" he yelled. "Hot. Hot. Really hot." The remaining Fury tried to get the daughter of Athena of her back, kicking, clawing, and hissing. But the girl held on while the satyr tied Mrs. Dodds with her own whip. The two shoved her backwards into the aisle. Mrs. Dodds tried to get up, but she didn't have enough room to flap her bat wings, so she kept on falling down. "Zeus will destroy you," she shouted. "Hades will have your souls," she said to the two children of the Big Three. "Been dead, done that," Naruto retorted as he glared at the struggling Fury. "Bracas mis vesi mini," Percy yelled. He wasn't sure where the Latin came from. He wasn't entirely sure what he'd said, but he thought it was something like, "Eat my pants." But judging by the dry look Percy just knew Naruto was sending him through his red helmet, he probably said something stupid. Naruto shocked the monster with his lightning, knocking back the Fury who had finally clawed her way upright, while he changed his curved blade back into his pistol and holstered it. Thunder shook the bus as the hair rose on the back of Percy's neck. "Get out!" Annabeth yelled at them. "Now!" They didn't need any encouragement. Rushing outside, the four found the other passengers wandering around in a daze, arguing with the driver, or running around circles yelling, "We're gonna die." "Holy shit!" one tourist shouted once they saw the masked Naruto. "It's him. The Red Hood." the man exclaimed as he snapped the helmeted blonde's photograph, while another tourist snapped Percy's who couldn't recap his sword. Oh shit. Naruto realized his mistake. He was still a wanted criminal. Before the whiskered blonde could do anything, Grover's shout caught his attention. Our bags. We left our dash. Boom. Lightning struck, and the windows of the bus exploded as the passengers ran for cover. Lightning shredded a huge crater through the roof, and where the Fury last stood, all that remained of Mrs. Dodds was a pile of golden dust. Naruto looked up at the sky and silently thanked his sire for the bolt of lightning. The sky rumbled, as if it heard the blonde's thanks. Naruto turned towards his group and motioned them to follow him, to which the three complied. The four soon stopped at another street, where they could still see the aftermath of the explosion. What are we gonna do now? Grover frantically whispered, his panic spreading when he heard sirens. Naruto stayed silent before walking towards a parked white and blue striped Shelby Mustang, and promptly shattered the driver's window. Annabeth, Grover, and Percy watched in shock as the helmeted blonde silenced the muscle car and got into the vehicle and looked at them, his red helmet giving them no expression. What are you three waiting for? Get in the car. The three quickly entered, Annabeth calling shotgun, while Grover and Percy sat at the back. It was quiet as the blonde in the driver's seat hotwired the car. Soon enough, the engine roared to life, and Naruto pressed the gas pedal and they were off. Where are we going? Percy asked his cousin, breaking the silence. Easy, Gotham. Gotham. Annabeth, Grover, and Percy echoed in shock. Gotham. As in, highest murders per capita, Gotham. Grover asked after the shock. Naru, are you crazy? That city's miles away. Naruto grunted. We're out of supplies, right? I have safe houses in Gotham, we can restock there, and continue our quest. He told them. Safe houses? Since when did you get safe houses? Percy asked. He's the Red Hood, Seaweed Brain, that name ring any bell? Annabeth said. Red Hood. Percy trailed off as he looked down. That was familiar, one of the passengers called Naruto that, right? I heard about Red Hood before. He muttered, before widening his eyes. You're a criminal. Percy realized, pointing a finger at the blonde in front of him. Naruto stayed silent. Percy's right, and after we go in one of your safe houses, we will have a very long talk about your exploits, Whiskers. Annabeth said far too sweetly, her tone like honey. Naruto paled, when he recognized that tone. That's the tone Barbara usually used when she was mad. Fuck. Why yes, Annie. He replied shakily. Wait a sec, if you're a criminal. Grover started, does that mean the Batman is gonna hunt us down? He yelled in a panic. Awesome. Percy muttered. Hey, if he had a chance to meet Batman, then he'd take it. Grover's right, Whiskers, what if we do encounter him? Annabeth asked worriedly. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he focused on the road. Let's hope it doesn't come down to that. The car ride to Gotham was silent. The occupants of the muscle car minded their own business as the engines rumbled silently while the vehicle moved smoothly along the road heading towards the infamous city. The ride itself was uneventful at least. The three demigods and one satyr basked in the relative peace and quiet offered to them as long as they could. Gods knowing that these few moments would be scarce in the future of their journey. Percy stared out the window quietly, his sea-green eyes casually glancing in boredom at the passing trees and land while the satyr beside him slept soundly with no care in the world, letting out a few snores as he did. Annabeth silently looked down, mindlessly playing with her cap in the passenger seat. Her eyes sneaking glances at the whiskered blonde driving. Speaking of the blonde himself, The preteen in the driver's seat was silent throughout the whole ride, his eyes focused on the road as he drove in a moderate speed. He wished he could say the same about his conscience. His mind was in a flurry of thoughts around the city they were driving to. Mixed emotions, both that delved in nostalgia over the time, as short as it was, living in Gotham. Casually exploring the streets with Barbara, having fun in the day. And patrolling the city rooftops at night with Batgirl, and occasionally, Nightwing. Even if Grayson was an asshole to him, the two knew that they needed to set their distaste for one another aside during patrol. Often replacing their heated arguments and insults with competitions of who would beat each thugs faster, or who could scale Wayne Tower without Bruce catching them. It would often involve with the old man lecturing them about slacking off in patrol. Then there were times where Naruto would just spend his free time lounging about in Wayne Manor, talking with Alfred, helping the butler and cleaning the many rooms of the manor, washing the dishes, trimming the bushes and more. Despite his rough upbringing, and his mourning of Thalia, the butler supported him through those hard days and helped him cope with the loss of his now-known sister. Those were the days. Yet, the memories of what happened to him with the clown, his death, Bruce's failure of saving him, and the stinging betrayal of being replaced by someone else no less than a year later gave a more than sour taste in his mouth. The thought made him wonder if his biological father, his godly parent, would do the same to him. Did Zeus actually care for him? Did he watch his son suffer all of the things that had been brought upon him with an impassive stare? Did Zeus even cared when Naruto was at Hades' door? Did Zeus think of him merely as a trophy, something to be bragged upon and shown to others, rather than someone he had created with love with his mother? Naruto gripped the wheel tightly, but not enough to crush the piece of vehicle. Stepping on the gas pedal and accelerated, overtaking a vehicle as they entered a highway. The bridge slowly took into view, a mile of cars were seen ahead, along with the city lights illuminated from behind the bridge separating the city from the mainland of America. The boy looked up at the statue that had greeted visitors and tourists alike. The statues chiseled on the building arch constructed on the bridge that had Gotham behind it just a few miles away. Pioneers Bridge. The two statues stood tall, their stone-faced eyes meeting each other from across their position in the arch that overlooked Gotham. They shortly passed the first landmark of the city and entered the main islands of Gotham City. Naruto rolled down his window and let his eyes roam freely, but not enough to not pay attention to the road ahead of him, to look around his former home in nostalgia and slight awe. He chuckled softly, his electric blue eyes twinkling in small delight as he drove. The smell of the city, coupled with the usual smell of sewer and usual hustle and bustle of the Grand Central train station that was construed in the middle of the island, brought back memories that made the blonde smile. My agony, Naruto muttered, still doesn't change, after all this time. He mused. The car turned slightly and changed directions, heading towards the seaside of the island where the closed-down Arkham Asylum could be seen from the island it was built on, looming mysteriously as it rotted from the years of neglect and nature taking over. Even today, Naruto still didn't think of the asylum too fondly, always remembering the various criminals of every kind locked up in the abandoned facility. Not to mention it also held a very curious past and mysterious secrets. While he wasn't the most attentive learner out there, the many strategies, detective work, and criminal files he used to help Bruce with somehow still stuck with him to this day, and his inner detective was a bit eager to know what happened after the aftermath of the last breakout. Maybe one day, he would. Is it true? Annabeth broke the other blonde's musings. Naruto briefly glanced at her as he drove. The blonde girl sighed, and gazed at him with a look. Richmond, were you really there? The older teen stiffened at the question. That only seemed to further the girl's suspicion, as she fully turned and faced her fellow blonde with a demanding gaze. Well, Annabeth said impatiently. No. Naruto answered after a moment of silence. The look of betrayal the girl gave her only hurt him. You were lying to me. The expression on Annie's face tore him on the inside. It's not that, Annabeth, it's Dash. What? One of your various escapades as Red Hood. Annabeth glared at him angrily. While you played hero, and I use that term lightly, she finger-quoted the word. While you dealt with criminal and so-called scum in Richmond. The girl listed off, much to Naruto's chagrin. What else did you do? She demanded. Annabeth, please. Naruto pleaded. Not now, Dash, no. She cut him off abruptly, anger flooding her voice. From the back, Percy jerked in surprise at the sudden outburst and looked at the front with curious eyes. You will answer my question, Naruto Uzumaki, or so help me, Dash. Grover woke with a start, and a snort. Wha? What happened? He asked tiredly, yawning loudly, stopping Annabeth mid-sentence. The satyr looked out the window and widened his eyes in surprise when buildings met his gaze. Are we in Gotham already? The daughter of wisdom huffed, and turned back to the windshield with crossed arms, her face in an angry visage. To answer your first question, it's nothing, Grover, she assured him. Naruto and I just had a discussion. The girl spat. Satyr looked at her in confusion, before switching his gaze to Percy, silently asking for, and just shook his head, a sign of warning, his eyes discreetly pointing towards Annabeth and Naruto, who were both nodded with understanding. For your second question, yes. Oh. Grover let out. The satyr felt nervousness as he twiddled his thumbs in order to pass the time. That, and to try to ease off the heavy atmosphere that had suddenly pressured them. So, the music's nice. Grover said, trying to break the tension in the air. Naruto's hand left the wheel and reached the radio, then proceeded to change the radio station, much to the satyr's disappointment. And now we give you Gotham news. The man said jovially, like there was actual good news, despite from experience, Naruto knew it was anything but. With our reporter, Vicky Vale. Another voice replaced the man's, a female, by the sound of it. Thank you, Bill. The Vicky said, in light of Arkham Asylum's closing, mayoral candidate, and former warden, Quincy Sharp, is rumored to have proposed to Gotham a new project for the recent moved-out prisoners of the former asylum, a new maximum prison. Using the old Gotham area as housing for Arkham's former inmates. As the reporter continued, Naruto moved his hand and turned the volume up as he drove. The demigods and satyr listened in interest. While there are no confirmed reports yet, Quincy Sharp had dubbed the new project, calling it Arkham City. Oh, of course something like these happens just as I come back. Naruto muttered. Just our luck. They're seriously building another mega prison for those guys. Grover exclaimed, shocked as the news continued. This is all just speculations, right? Percy asked nervously. I mean, they're not really serious about putting a bunch of prisoners in the middle of the city, right? He asked no one in particular. Right. Percy repeated, looking at Naruto. The older boy caught the son of Poseidon's gaze, and shrugged. Honestly, with all the shit Gotham's been through the past years, I won't be surprised if they would do it. The blonde said dismissively. The statement only seemed to make the black-haired boy all the more nervous as they turned another corner, passing by a rather large tower that held the name Wayne on the center. Percy and Grover stared in wonder at the various towers and buildings they passed, whereas Annabeth awed at the sight of Wayne Tower. The former Robin passed a glance on the tower, and looked away, a slight pain evident in his eyes. They shortly drove for another 30 minutes, passing by numerous buildings and high-standing towers that occupied Gotham City. Finally, Naruto turned to an alley and drove towards the dark, narrow path, parking the stolen vehicle in the alleyway. The son of Zeus switched the ignition and the vehicle turning off in an instant. Naruto opened the door and got out, shortly followed by his other companions. The blonde approached a fire escape, grabbing the first step of the ladder, and pulled it down, climbing it, Annabeth, Percy, and Grover following suit. This way, the blonde gestured, opening a window, and climbed inside, shadowed by the darkness. Percy looked at the satyr, then Annabeth for a moment, before shrugging, and proceeded to enter the dark room. Naruto looked around the darkness, scanning the room he was in, as his hand felt up the walls, before he finally felt his hand bump into the light switch and flicked it. Lights shined into the room, revealing the contents of the area. The blonde sighed in relief, happy to see that nothing was stolen or touched while he was gone. Moving his hands to the underside of his helmet, he pushed it up, freeing his spiky hair from its prison as he placed the helmet on the side of his hip. "Hello, bed," Naruto greeted softly as he walked towards a nearby table. The son of Zeus set his hood down beside an unloaded pistol. "Hello, table." He softly fell down the single bed and sighed in content as Percy and Annabeth, who was helping Grover fit through the window, came inside the room. His eyes switched to a vase filled with flowers that were now wilted, beside his bed. "Hello, flowers." The daughter of Athena looked at her fellow blonde with a raised eyebrow. "You do know that talking to inanimate objects is a sign of insanity, right?" Naruto rolled in his bed. "Tell me something I don't know," he replied. Meanwhile, Percy stared, awed at the collection of weapons, ranging from various firearms to melee weapons, which all hung from one wall. Grover gave out nervous bleats at the sight of so many guns. The demigod rolled back and forth, until he noticed a tear on his jacket, which were just one of the many he had gotten from the last skirmish he had with the monsters they encountered. Sighing, the blonde stood up from his bed, and approached a closet, opening it, revealing various jackets and armor. Naruto removed his jacket, before he grabbed the zipper of his jumpsuit, and pulled it down. He was in the middle of pulling his arms out of the jumpsuit, before he realized that Percy, Annabeth, and Grover were still in the room. He craned his head to the three occupants. Annabeth was red in the face as she stared at the back of the son of Zeus, her mind going into haywire as her eyes twitched erratically. Percy sulked at how developed the older boy was. He was just a year older. "How?" "You guys can wait in the living room," Naruto said after a moment of awkward silence. Percy and Grover slowly walked towards the door, opening it, and stepped out without making a noise. Annie," Naruto said when the girl didn't follow the others. Annabeth stayed silent as her blush died down, her look replaced by concerned expression. Despite how the other blonde had grown, the girl noticed the numerous scars that littered the son of Zeus' back. Slowly, she approached the boy. She raised a hand up, and traced a particular scar that went from his shoulder to the middle of his spine. "Where did you get these?" the daughter of wisdom asked softly. "I don't know, a fight here, a fight there, maybe a few monsters did this one," the demigod joked airily, pointing at one scar on his arm at the last mention. "Naruto Uzumaki," Annabeth started. Before she started hit him. "Can you at least take this seriously?" She shouted her anger at him as her fists pounded against his back repeatedly. The hits really didn't hurt. He felt worse, way worse. Finally, she stopped, catching her breath as Naruto turned around. "Annie." The blonde looked down. Annabeth didn't answer, her shoulders rising and falling with every breath she took, her fists clenched tightly that it might draw out blood. The whiskered blonde flinched slightly, before he put a hand on her shoulder, his eyes showing the same amount of pain and anger as she did. Anger towards him. "Do you know, how long I mourned over you and Thalia," she suddenly muttered, her neck craning up, showing the fresh tears that glistened on her face. "Did you know how long Luke and I tried to live our lives, knowing that we could have fully prevented your deaths?" Naruto looked away. "And yet," she chuckled hollowly, "when I find out you're alive, what happens?" the girl asked him in a rhetorical manner. "You became a killer." The boy flinched at the accusation. "No, fact." The daughter of wisdom closed her eyes and turned away from the older teen, her hand finding their way to the sides of her arms as she tried to restrain the amount of pain showing right now. "Do you think Thalia would be proud of what you had become? What her little brother had become?" Annabeth asked him. Naruto tried to speak, but his words died down. He looked down towards his hands. Hands, once smooth and innocent, now filled with scars and callus, already drenched in blood more than once, already laying hands on a man's neck tightly more than once. His eye switched to Annabeth, and for a split second Thalia appeared. He could still remember her appearance as clear as day, and as she looked at him with disgusted eyes, he had fully realized the consequences of what Thalia and Ra's influence had on him. And just like that, she was gone. "Dear gods!" Naruto muttered, horrified. What happened to him? He felt her hand grasped his arm. "Please." Annabeth's voice didn't sound like she normally would. She didn't sound strong, she didn't sound determined. She sounded broken. "Don't do this. Not you. I don't want to lose you too," she begged, pleaded. The daughter of Athena looked up when she felt Naruto's hand grasp her own. "I won't kill Annie," Naruto stated. "For you." She went silent for a moment, before she looked up at him once more, her eyes directly meeting his. "Promise me," the girl softly demanded. "It's a promise of a lifetime." After a short while, the door opened, and Annabeth walked towards the couch, where Percy sat channel surfing at the TV, whilst Grover raided Naruto's kitchen cabinets for food. "Seriously, is there anything the guy eats other than ramen?" the satyr complained, holding a pack of instant noodles with him. The daughter of Athena let a small smile slip into her face, happy that some remnants of the old Naruto still lingered. She moved and sat on a chair that stood by the kitchen table. "'Cause it saves me from going out, and possibly reveal myself to Batman." The bedroom door opened, and revealed Naruto. He was dressed differently this time. Replacing his helmet, was a faceless version of his previous hood, now supporting contours that went narrow on the middle of his helmet, which now looked transparent, yet just red enough to mask his face. Gray machinery were set at the edges and sides of the mask, used for sliding the front piece of his new hood. His brown jacket was gone, in its place was a white and black leather jacket, akin to that of a motorcyclist, while an actual red hood was up, covering the top of his head. A gray shirt was underneath the jacket, padded with body armor as his symbol was painted in the middle of his chest. The gauntlets his sire gave him strapped on his wrists. His jumpsuit pants were replaced by gray ones, which were secured by a belt that had pouches with various smoke bombs, and his grappling hook. On the sides of his thighs were straps that were connected to small pouches, which held his kunai and shuriken, while his boots were covered with armor. On the other pouches were twin dual pistols, a weapon he would use should he ever be attacked by mortals. And considering they were in Gotham, it was bound to happen. He tapped the side of his helmet, which slid up, revealing his whiskered face. "Ready to go?" Percy, Annabeth, and Grover nodded. "No matter how many times this happens, I'll never get used to having repeated migraines." Tim sighed and ran a hand over his hair as he sat at one of the many couches that were in Wayne Manor, a place that even if he had seen, lived, and memorized, was still a huge, and honestly, a bit puzzling to go through every now and then. He groaned as he felt another headache coming. Grunting, the young teen adjusted the ice pack he held at his temple, which numbed the bruising a bit. Bruce, Dick, Barb, along with Steph, and Cass were already in the cave, doing all they could to scour to find any information or tidbit they could find about their elusive brother. A few hours ago, a picture surfaced through the net, showing the former Robin himself near New York, which was miles away from Gotham. And that only meant one thing. The Red Hood was back. After months of inactivity, he had resurfaced, and his mentor and companions were out to find him. As for Tim, well, then I advise you be more careful out there, Master Timothy, Alfred said as he entered the room, handing down a tray of tea for the young teen to drink on the nearby table. It's just a slight bruise, Alfred. Tim grumbled sourly, wincing a bit as his head throbbed in pain once more. Any injury is still an injury, Master Timothy, the butler refuted. Just be glad that it is not anything serious. Yeah, the boy wonder muttered. He slumped on couch in boredom, his eyes gazing up to the portrait of his mentor's parents hung on the wall, the fireplace dimly lighting the room he was in. Until his eyes caught a sheet of cloth hiding an object at the corner of the room. If it weren't for the piece of cloth standing out, just able for the light to touch the material, the boy wouldn't have noticed. The boy stood up, despite the headache he had, and walked towards the object. Gently, he grabbed the sheet of cloth and removed it, revealing a portrait of a girl that he was unfamiliar of. She was a girl his age. Her eyes were one of the first things he noticed, which were electric blue, a color that was scarily familiar to his predecessor's own eyes. Her short and slightly spiky hair was raven black, just like his own, while her pale complexion, along with the freckles dotted on her face, were a contradiction. Behind him, Alfred's smile dimmed as he approached the young Robin, placing the tray of antibiotics and medicinal equipment down on the table. Ah, it seems you've discovered Miss Grace, Alfred said, causing Tim to turn around. Who? Miss Thalia Grace. Alfred clarified as he ushered the young boy to the side. I have been meaning to put this up again, he said, grabbing the portrait. The elderly man hefted it up. He carefully cleaned it, making sure to wipe any dust that clung to the portrait. Soon, he stood up, and set the portrait up on the empty wall at the room. Tim gazed at the now clean painting in curiosity. Who was she? An important person, to Master Naruto, Alfred answered, smiling fondly at the painting, though there was a hint of pain hidden in the smile. Oh, was all he uttered. The subject of the former Robin was still sore to the elder butler, even to the others, so Tim didn't bother to delve further. He obviously didn't know how hard Naruto impacted their lives, considering that he didn't know the second Robin aside from being the guy who beat the shit out of him in the Titan's Tower no less, but he knew that his brother was still important to the lives of his mentor and companions. All he wanted to was answers from his predecessor. A knock at the door was heard, prompting Tim to turn around. Tim! A voice called out. From the open doorway was Stephanie, fully dressed in her gear, her mask off, showing her blonde locks, her face filled with urgency. Steph! Suit up, we need you at the cave. As Tim entered via the steps into the Bat Cave, he watched the others in mild curiosity as he approached the table holding his gadgets. Bruce was pacing around the cave. Distressed, it was a bit of a surprise to see his mentor like that. In rare moments did Tim see Bruce in this state, much of which lately had been centered around the former Robin they were currently hunting down. Add to the recent closing of Arkham Asylum, and the rumors of opening of Arkham City, a Project Bruce actively protests as his day-life alter ego. His mentor's days were now filled with nothing but meetings, and meetings after meetings. The stress was all piling up on the dark night. Barbara was at the computer, typing away as usual. Though the same urgency and stress seen in Bruce also presently seen on her face and demeanor. Even Dick, as laid back and relaxed as he was normally. The time of relaxation was gone out of the window, and was in his gear, poring over various case files as Cassandra trained in the sparring ring alone. "What's happening?" the third Robin asked, putting on his mask and clipping his belt. "We have a lead on the Red Hood," Barbara answered, her eyes focusing on the computer. "He's back in Gotham?" Tim asked, alarmed. "Yes." Bruce nodded, slipping on his cowl. "He's been spotted in the city." The Batman adjusted some of his equipment, before heading on to the Batmobile, mentioning Tim to follow him. "We're going after him." As Grover and Percy got out the safe house via window, the two stood aside while Naruto and Annabeth followed shortly after them. The boy motioned them to follow him as he climbed the higher ladder, leading to the rooftops above. "Let's get a move on." "This quick?" Percy stopped briefly, and turned his head to face the boy, glaring at him from behind his helmet. "If you want the bat to get us, be my guest." That shut him up quickly. The blonde quickly scaled the wall, reaching the rooftops after a few moments. Letting down his hand, he helped his quest companions up, hefting them with one hand. The Sky Child dashed towards an entrance to the rooftop, hiding behind the darkness, and gestured the other three to follow what he did. "Stick to the shadows," he instructed them. "It'll help you hide better." With that, the blonde quickly ran and slid towards a steel pipe that ran across the edges of the building. Annabeth followed, used to the motions her fellow blonde did, living in the streets, while hiding from monsters in a young age helped her in that regard. Percy managed to crouch as he went beside the Daughter of Wisdom, trying his best not to move as his cousin surveyed the next rooftop. Grover, however, was not as silent, his eyes darting from every corner in a frantic manner. Slowly putting a furry hand over his mouth, the satyr did his best to stop his bleats from coming out. Naruto stood up after a moment, nodding at them, before he ran towards the edge of the rooftop. Sliding to a stop, he leapt down into the walls of the building and into the alleyway below, his helmet illuminating from the dark. He looked up, seeing Annabeth putting her head out from the edge of the rooftop he previously occupied. Putting his arms out, he motioned the girl to jump. Noticing the hesitancy on her face, the blonde frowned, his lips tugging from behind his helmet. "I'll catch you," he shouted. Annabeth still looked hesitant, before she begrudgingly took a step back, inhaling and exhaling as she did, ignoring Grover and Percy's looks. With one goal in mind, she ran towards the edge. And jumped. The girl gave out a yell as she fell from the building, closing her eyes as she tried to calm down, which she was failing at. Until she landed into the Son of Zeus' arms. "You okay, Annie?" She flushed brightly, turning her head, she muttered. "I'm okay." Getting off the blonde, she made sure to turn around, careful not to make him see her red cheeks. As Naruto caught Percy, who did his best not to scream, Annabeth felt something off in the air, her eyes scanning the alleyway. She didn't know why, but she felt like they were being watched. She muttered. Her thoughts were interrupted, when Grover let out a huge bleat as he fell, Naruto catching him a moment after. "You okay, Groves?" the helmeted demigod asked, his hand patting the satyr on the back. "I'll be fine in a minute," Grover replied breathlessly, his hands on his knees as he tried to catch his breath. "Whiskers." Annabeth caught Naruto's attention as she tapped his shoulder, prompting the blonde to look at the Daughter of Athena. The girl looked nervous, suspicious even, her gray eyes scanning the alleyway they were in frantically. On the side note, the grip on his arm grew tighter. "Is everything okay?" she heard her fellow blonde ask. Just as she was about to answer, her eyes caught a glimpse of shattered glass in the alleyway. It reflected, showing a shadowed figure up on the rooftop behind them. Her breathing hitched. Her grip on the other blonde's arm tightened to the point of uncomfort. Annie dash. Not now, look. She whispered, her mind panicking as she subtly pointed at the shards of glass that showed their stalker. Shit. Naruto cursed at the new development. Just his luck. What are we gonna do? Grover frantically whispered as Percy joined in, looking just as alarmed as the goat boy. Stay calm. Naruto advised, they're gonna know that we spotted them if we start to freak out, so stay calm. Calm, yeah, I can do calm. Grover inhaled and exhaled as his hands shook from nervousness. Just have to stay calm. He stuttered. Here's what I need you guys to do. The son of Zeus started. First off, we're going to split up. I sure as hell know that the bat has his sidekicks with him, so, if we separate, it'll be a longer time before they round us up. Whiskers. Are you sure about this? Annabeth asked with uncertainty, her mind trying to come up with other strategies, as she did. But it all ended to moot. All of the plans she came up with heavily relied on the surroundings they were in. Which was a problem. She didn't know absolutely jack about Gotham's layout, much less the part of the city they were in. So she needed to rely on the one person that had been to Gotham. It's the best thing I've come up with, Naruto stated. That, and it's the only one that doesn't involve me blasting a new hole into whoever is stalking us with my gun. Stick together when I tell you guys to run. It doesn't matter where you go, just get the hell out of this area. Okay. The two demigods, and Saturn nodded. Naruto sighed deeply. His hand slowly reached up to the many pouches of his belt, discreetly taking a shuriken. The blonde gripped it tightly, almost to the point that he could feel the sharpness, even with his gloves on. He inhaled. Memories of the League, all cast, and their trainings flashed into his mind. He let the shuriken fall for a millisecond, catching it at its last tip. Lightning dancing at his fingertips. Before he threw it. Run. The three bolted, as Naruto immediately turned heel, facing the wall behind him, and moved his head to look up. And just as he expected, a shadowy figure stood tall from the rooftop of the building. Quickly grabbing his grapple, the blonde watched it go up, and cling to the edge of the roof. Pulling the trigger, he shot up from his position, and onto the rooftop, facing his stalker. Well, Naruto started, his deepening his voice as he did, staring at the figure in front of him. If it ain't the replacement himself. Deep inside him, an emotion swelled up, the feeling of anger directed towards the boy in front of him. Robin growled as he went into a fighting stance. From the side, his earpiece rung out. Distract him while Bruce and Stephanie get the other targets. Oracle ordered. Tim nodded. Got it. He muttered silently, then looked back at his opponent, his white lenses narrowing. Red Hood. The boy wonder shouted, You're not going anywhere. That's where I decide, kid. He replied, taking out a kunai. Now, why don't you go back to the bat, before I get feisty? The masked boy's response was a birdurung heading towards him. Thanks to his enhanced senses, Naruto was able to dodge, and block the incoming projectile, sending it to the ground. Tim charged at his predecessor with a roar, sending an upwards kick to the masked blonde. Naruto leaned backwards with a laugh, taunting the caped preteen as he ducked and sent a punch to the boy's ribs. He heard the younger boy grunt, which made Naruto smirk. Twisting himself, the blonde went behind Robin and aimed a kick to the boy's face. Robin ducked under the attack only for the blonde's other leg to strike his face. Rookie mistake, replacement. Naruto laughed. Tim growled and grabbed his staff. Extending it, the black-haired boy charged once more and swung his metal staff to the blonde's side. Naruto, however, expected this, and used his kunai to block the incoming weapon. The two stood as they battled for dominance. Tim gritting his teeth as he tried to exert more effort, pushing the staff with all his might. The Red Hood grunted, and flipped over the metal weapon, watching Robin tumble over at the unexpected move. Bringing out his shurikens, Naruto quickly threw it at the boy, smirking when one of his projectiles grazed Robin's arm, while the other made a hole in his cape. "Too slow, boy wonder," the older teen jeered. A huge puff of smoke engulfed the area as Naruto landed. "Trying to hide?" the son of Zeus chuckled. Under his helmet, his thermal vision activated and the figure of Robin appeared within the confines of the smoke. "Ain't gonna work." He turned around and grabbed the foot that aimed for his face. A beep was heard, and Naruto looked down, only to see a device shaped like a bat attached to his chest. Before he could even curse, a mini explosion engulfed the area, removing the previous smoke. Tim landed, his cape shrouding him as he did. A grapple was shot, and a claw grabbed onto his chest. Tim looked down. It was too late. The moment he looked up, an armored boot met the young Robin's face, sending him crashing to the ground, stopping at the edge of the rooftop. "You got new tricks?" Red Hood's robotic voice rung out. Out of the smoke, he approached him, flipping a kunai. "I do too." "You're not the only one." A new voice rang out, and Naruto turned his head at the direction of the sound, only to see stars when a black boot kicked him away from Robin. He grunted as he skidded towards the ground, catching himself momentarily after. "This ends now, Hood." Naruto stood up, and glared at the masked teen in front of him. "Shouldn't you be back in Bloodhaven, Dicky Bird?" Naruto mocked as he stood up. Nightwing frowned at the former Robin, staying silent as he helped him up. The helmeted teen chuckled as he nursed his stomach while he stood up. The emotionless and blank mask that somehow unnerved Tim more than the snarling whiskered visage that had faced him in Titan's Tower. "What's the matter, out of jokes?" the Red Hood asked, readying another kunai. "I don't joke when it comes to family, Naruto." The Red Hood scoffed, dusting his jacket as did so, and cracked his neck. "Oh, so we're in a first-name basis now." Quickly, he threw flash grenades towards the unsuspecting vigilantes. All the two heroes could hear was ringing in their ears. Dick growled as he tried to balance himself, all the while trying to find Robin while he silently reprimanded himself of falling for such a cheap trap. The teen grunted, when he felt a fist plant in his gut, which was quickly followed by a kick to the legs sending him down. "'Cause as far as I can remember, we were never like that." The blonde kneed the older teen in the ribs, as straddled him. Dick felt cold steel on his throat. "Nightwing." Before Naruto could do anything, a roar from his successor briefly distracted him, only for Robin to tackle him to the ground, making him drop his kunai. "Why you little shit." The blonde snarled and planted both of his feet on the boy's chest. With force, he pushed, and kicked Robin away. Naruto immediately got up, and ducked from a flying kick that was aimed for him by Nightwing. He blocked a punch that the older teen sent his way, before grabbing his arm. Dick screamed in shock when a force akin to almost lightning struck his body. The blonde landed a final punch to the black-haired teen's face. From the side, Tim grunted, and nursed his arm. Standing up, he tried to make way to the first Robin's form. "Tim, we have the targets, get out there, now. Let Bruce handle him." "Little busy here." The boy responded as he moved his hand to get something from his utility belt. Robin gave a shout of pain when a shuriken embedded itself on his arm. Quickly flinging the sharpened projectile away, the boy grabbed his injured hand with gritted teeth. "Don't think you're going anywhere." Tim heard the older boy chuckle as he approached him. Dick was in too much in pain to move. Despite all of the things he'd been through, Tim smirked, the metallic taste of blood smearing his lips, but that didn't dissuade him. Naruto stopped for a moment, tilting his head at the smirk. Until it clicked. Shit. The others. Turning heel, the blonde sprinted towards the end of the rooftop and grappled out away in a hurry. Tim activated his earpiece. This is Robin, Hood is on the move, I repeat. Hood is on the move. A buzz was heard. Got it, go after him, Bruce will trace your coordinates. What about Batgirl? She's keeping the other targets busy. As Oracle signed off, Robin rushed to Nightwing's side, and hefted him up, helping him get on his feet. Dick groaned in pain as he held his side. He's gotten stronger. Tim nodded in agreement. Oracle told me to go after him, Batman will trace his location from there. Nightwing rolled his shoulders as he watched the Red Hood jump from rooftop to rooftop. What are we waiting for then? Let's get a move on. Naruto panted as he ran from rooftop to rooftop, the sounds of other rushing footsteps from behind him only settled him to quicken his steps. He had to save them. He needs to save them. The son of Zeus slid off another rooftop, landing down in the alley below, his boots impacting a small puddle as he did. Ignoring that, the Sky Child continued to run as Nightwing and Robin were on his tail. But he was relentless. He dived, and flipped past incoming cars, shoving through people in his pursuit to save his quest companions. Quickly, the blonde turned another corner, entering yet another alleyway. Rushing to the fence at the end, the sounds of people coming after him helped quicken his pace as he jumped off the wall, and onto the other side. Fiddling with his belt, Naruto took out his grappling gun, and shot to the skies once more. He landed on a gargoyle, then proceeded to jump from gargoyle to gargoyle, nearly missing, and tumbling in one mistake when he did. Naruto twisted his body, and flipped in the air, landing on a rooftop. He grabbed his knees, catching his breath. Before the sounds of soft and light footsteps hit his ears. Whoever you are, you better go away before I fuck you up. The Red Hood threatened darkly as he turned his head to look at his would-be opponent. She was small, up to Annabeth's height, and possibly the same build as her. Black was the main color of her outfit, while yellow trimming was the secondary color. The ever-famous bat symbol was displayed on her chest with bright yellow, similar to her utility belt. Whilst her cowl's mouthpiece looked sewed shut, and the eye lenses were general black. And who in Hades are you? The preteen asked rudely. Behind her mask, Cassandra's eyes softened. Even now, he still used the same curses as before. Slowly, she brought a hand to the edge of her mask. And peeled off her cowl, revealing her face to the boy. "Ca Cassie." She watched, as his body language changed in an instant, one of happiness and familiarity. The boy grabbed his hood, and pulled it down, revealing the faceless red helmet. He tapped the sides, and the front piece slid up, revealing the boy's whiskered face. Cassandra noted that the boy had changed in appearance, his baby fat was gone, replaced with a not fully rounded, but not entirely squared jawline. While parts of his spiky hair grew, twin bangs framed the sides of his face that stuck out of the helmet. "Is that you?" Cassandra nodded softly. She took one step closer to him, only for Naruto to step back. Her sharp eyes caught his hand reach the holster of his gun in instinct, as his other hand went to the pouches of his legs. It seemed even as he grew, his paranoia grew with him. The girl took another step. "Not going to hurt you," she said softly. She watched his surprise expression, giggling in the inside at how baffled he was that she could talk a bit easier now. His expression changed to an untrusting one. "Who says you won't?" the blonde retorted. Before she could talk further, a shadowy figure glided down from behind the criminal. Naruto turned his head when sudden darkness blanketed him. Lo and behold, it was the Batman himself. The previous adrenaline kicked in, as his blood rushed. The feeling of hate, anger, and fury came back as one, all in a whirlpool of emotion that made him just want to strike the man in front of him. He snarled, and ran towards him with a roar. But Cassandra was quicker, dashing towards him in a second before she wrapped her arms around him, holding him back. "Let me go, Cassie," Naruto silently muttered, his teeth gritting as he did. "He needs to pay." "Don't," the girl pleaded with him. From behind her, she felt Dick and Tim land at the rooftop they stood on. "Naruto," Bruce muttered softly, his eyes landing on his wayward son. The kid had obviously grown, he could tell just by his face. A feeling inside the Dark Knight swell. Bruce could see it. His son, all grown up, ready to face the world and its challenges, to face whatever it would throw at him. And he would never be there for him. It hurt Bruce. To know that Naruto was growing up, and he wasn't part of it. "Don't you dare say my name," the boy snarled in fury, his anger taking over any rational thought as Cassandra did her best to hold him back. A tug on his arm brought the blonde's attention to the girl holding him. Cassandra looked up to the boy with pleading eyes, begging him to stop, lest he do anything else reckless. "Won't affect anything if you hurt him," she tried to reason with the teen, "will only leave you empty in the end." Naruto looked down, as another figure landed in the background. His eyes glanced at the newcomer. She was also young, maybe Percy's age from the face. Her suit was that of Barbara's, only the color was purple and black. However, that didn't caught his attention. What caught his attention were the three unconscious Annabeth, Percy, and Grover laying on the ground. The blonde immediately tried to run to them, only for Cassandra to tighten her grip on him. He struggled to get out of the grip, shifting and moving in a desperate manner to save his quest companions. "They're not hurt," the new Batgirl assured him. The son of Zeus didn't believe that for a second. Naruto directed his eyes to the Dark Knight, his electric blue orbs almost crackling in fury as he glared daggers at his former mentor. "Please," he heard Cassandra speak. "Don't." The girl hugged him tighter. "Just want to talk." He wanted to lash out at her but he couldn't. He couldn't yell at her or tell her to go to hell. He had wanted someone to tell him they were glad he was back. Naruto gazed at the ground, before he sighed deeply. "Fine," he started, surprising the bats. "If it means to let them go, let's talk."